Okay, I'm going to talk about Spiritism in its simplest expression. I have approximately 30 minutes to talk about the subject, so it's going to be pretty basic, but I hope I do whet your appetites and hopefully kindle a bit of interest that you'll pursue the subject further. Believe me, there's a lot in Spiritism that I find very exciting, and I hope I can transmit that to you. I'm not here to convert you. The choice of following a spiritist path is truly yours, but I do recommend and I do believe there's a lot of beauty there. I hope I'll be able to demonstrate today. One thing I particularly like about Spiritism is that it is not just a religion, it is a science and a philosophy, and that hopefully will come apparent as I go through this presentation. First of all, why I'm here. When Sandra unfortunately is one of our directors who's not with us today, she asked me to do this talk, and I thought, well, why me? I'm very new to Spiritism. I first came to the centre I think my first visit was about almost 2 years ago now, but it's only about the last 18 months that I've been frequenting it often. But on the other hand, I thought, well, maybe that's a good attribute to have, in that I know what it's like to not know Spiritism. Now I know a little bit about it, and I can hopefully connect with those who, like me, were very skeptical when I first came here. I also suggested we had an annual general meeting here a couple of months ago, and where we reflected on the accomplishments of the year and looked forward. And I suggested we have this meeting because I found it very difficult when I first started coming here to understand a lot was going on. I was trying to catch a train that was already in motion, as it were. So this talk today is dedicated to the newcomers. I hope the other people who've been coming to the centre for some time will find some things of interest too. And my background before I came to this centre was very minimal in terms of religion. I was born in the north of England. My mother was a Methodist and sent me off to Sunday school on Sunday morning, which I hated. My father was very much an atheist. He just did not believe in religion. And I think I followed a lot of that thought process. When I was at university, it was the time when the conflict in Northern Ireland was going on between Protestants and Catholics. Although, having said that, there's a lot more in terms of class and history behind it. But I see so many conflicts in the world, and still today, of course, based on religion, that really deterred me from getting involved in any religious sort of following until I came across Spiritism. And one thing, again, that appealed to me about Spiritism is the fact that it is very scientific. It's not just a religion, it is a philosophy, it is a science, and it really connected with my way of thinking. So let's start off, again, just summarising what Terry's already mentioned. It's a very basic talk today on Spiritism. I'm going to be talking about 30-35 minutes. I'm going to hand it over to Sandra here, who's going to talk a little bit more about the activities we have here at the centre. And then we're going to do question and answers and the final prayer. So I'm going to start by talking about what Spiritism does not have. As you can see from our premises here, we're very basic. We don't need any, because Spiritism believes that we don't need great cathedrals and what else, shrines, should we say, mosques, because Spiritism is from within. It's not dependent on the environment which we're in. And by no means I'm not trying to downgrade other religions, and that's another good thing about Spiritism, that it's a very open religion. There's a lot of people here who were born Catholics. Other people still here go to other congregations and Protestant churches and so on, and that's fine. That's fine. Also, don't believe in candles and incense, and although I love having those at home, but it's not a necessary part of religion. If you want to pray with a candle, that's fine. That's up to you. No icons. There's no crucifixes on the wall in here. It's very simple. No other form of symbolisms. And we also have no formal clergy. We have a management structure, should we say. Won't call it an organisation chart, but we do have directors here at the centre, all voluntary. We have this centre is one of many in South Florida, and there is a federation of Spiritist centres of Florida, and then there's also one in the US. It is structured. A lot of Spiritism is practiced more in Brazil, and that's where the probably majority of Spiritist movement and centres are. And as a consequence, the cost of running the centre are very small. So we don't go for contributions. We do have voluntary contributions. Members could do voluntary contribute on a regular basis. And also sometimes the cash flow gets a little short, so we have little fundraisers where we all meet and have a lot of fun as well. So that's the other good side of it. Okay, what Spiritists do not believe in? Well, we do not believe that life ends at the grave, and that's the most fundamental part of Spiritism. I'll talk more about that afterwards. Also do not believe in sins and punishment. Yes, we have vices, we have virtues, and we'll talk more about that, but we don't, as a consequence, we don't believe, as other religions maybe do, that it's heaven or hell. You're saved or you're not. Also, there's no forced doctrine. There is a very big body of evidence, the Spirit's doctrine, but it's there as a reference. It's there to be used as you wish, and not something that you have to learn or you have to visit Mecca every year or whatever. And again, I'm not downgrading any of the religions, please. I'm just trying to contrast the differences. And we don't do missionary work going out trying to sell Spiritism, although today is a special event that we are trying to involve and spread the word. So if you want to take it up, you're very welcome. Okay, I'm going to kick right into some premises of Spiritism so you can see where I'm going. And one is that the Spiritists believe in the process of reincarnation and the existence of the spirit world. And we'll get more into that. And also the spirit world is there to teach us. There's a tremendous amount of communication between the spirits and us incarnates here, and there's a lot to learn from those teachings. And some of the, I think I've put here two of the maxims, if you like, but the essential objective is humankind's evolution. That's what Spiritism is about. It's trying to evolve humankind and move it forward in the right way. And it's no point coming to the centre just to talk Spiritism. What Spiritism, the main focus for me of Spiritism, is that if I've got to be a better person today than I was yesterday, and I'm going to be even better tomorrow. It's that constant process of trying to self-improvement. So let's just kick back a little bit and talk a bit about the history of reincarnation, which is not something new. This is a definition from Wikipedia. Reincarnation, religious or philosophical concept that the soul, spirit, after biological death begins a new life that may be animal, human, spiritual, depending on the moral quality of the previous life's actions. In Spiritism, we do not believe in the animal. There's no going backwards. But basically, that definition in Wikipedia does stand without the reference to the animal. We're constantly evolving. The earliest references go back to 600 years BC. With the Greeks, with Pythagoras and Plato. I thought Pythagoras was only responsible for triangles, but he did a lot of work on Spiritism. And of course, the religions of the eastern countries of India and China and Japan with the Buddhism and Sikhs and Hindu. Majority of the sects of Abrahamic religions, that term I only just came across in doing this presentation, but religions that believe in Abraham, which basically Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Majority of those sects do not believe in reincarnation, though there are some sects within that do. What is also fundamental is in Spiritism and in the history is that Jesus Christ was a spirit sent to help and give extra learning and teaching to the people of that time. Later on in the Middle Ages, a lot of the Spiritists were actually persecuted, burnt at the stake, witches and so on. And that was because of the domination of the church, particularly in Europe. So moving further on in time, we come to the 18th and 19th centuries, and it was an era of intellectual explosion. And again, I'm giving you this information to sort of set the scene as when Spiritism started in the mid-1850s. Philosophy started in what they called the Age of Enlightenment. It was a period of time that stretched almost 200 years, actually starting in the late 16th, 17th century. But it's when intellect started to develop and started to challenge the standards of the time, the aristocracies, the power of the church and the abuse of the church. And people started to question with more scientific thought. Some of the early philosophers, Adam Smith, Rousseau, just a few here, made a real big imprint on the whole start of this intellectual explosion. Then came the French Revolution, which over a period of 100 years transformed the status quo in France, and Paris then became one of the centers of the world. And we'll get more into that in a second. Actually, today is Bastille Day, just so it so happens. So, yeah. Then the scientific revolution with Newton, with Voltaire, who's a philosopher as well as a scientist. And everyone know who that is? Darwin. No. That was Darwin. Okay. And also, it's the start of the classical music era. Between 1780 and 1820, 40 years, a tremendous body of music was written. All Beethoven symphonies and Haydn, Schubert, Mozart, all happened at that same time. And then finally, the Romantic and Impressionism. This started with, the Romanticism was more the start of poetry. Then that started to be interpreted in paintings. Prior to that time, painting was either just a reproduction of what you see in a landscape or what you see in a personal portrait. And with the start of Romanticism, painters started to take poems and still using figures, but developing more of an imaginative picture behind that poem. And then that led on to the Impressionisms with Renoir and so on. Okay, so we're getting close now to Spiritism. Let's talk about Spiritism. It started in the around 1850, and it started in Europe and USA, referred to as strange phenomena, knocks, noises, raps, and movements of objects. And it was happening repeatedly and increasing intensity, and especially in the presence of certain people. Occurred with common objects and the convenience of the table, and the table being because you could sit around a table, and that was the start of the seances. And it became apparent there was some intelligence behind this. It wasn't just noises and raps, it was some form of communication. And many scientists started to look into it. One of them was Crookes, who was a member of the Royal Society in England, a very well-known scientist. And he spent some time studying this and published a paper. And in fact was rebuked by his colleagues, saying, you must be crazy, this. But he took a very scientific approach, and he got some very strong evidence that convinced him that there was some spiritual intelligence that was trying to communicate. It became at the time too a source of entertainment. There was no HBO or anything at that time, so it to some extent it was considered by some to be fraud and work of the devil. Then along came this Mr. Hippolyte Revel, who was a Frenchman, born in 1804, brought up as a Catholic. So he was 50 years old when this started to happen. And he was a very well-respected educator in France. He actually studied in the Pestalozzi Institute in Switzerland, which was an institute that started to turn education up on its head. It was prior to that, education was something you just was driven into you, and Pestalozzi and then later Revel started to teach more involvement, more questioning, more discussion about matters, and use that as a means of education. But he became interested in this spirit communications in about 1855. He was very skeptical at first. It was basically a colleague of his said, you must come to these meetings and see what you think. And initially he thought the phenomenon could be explained by magnetism. That was being discovered at the time. But after further study, he really agreed that there were some actions by spirits that could explain this, could only be explained by this. And after that time, he basically dedicated the rest of his life to studying Spiritism. He wasn't a medium himself, and a medium, we'll get a little bit more into that afterwards, but a medium is someone who has the ability to communicate with the spirits. We're all mediums, just to a greater or lesser extent. I'm sure a lot of us here today have had experience where we met someone. In fact, it happened this morning with Maria and and they're convinced they know each other.
We saw each other and we said, where do we know each other from?
Yeah. So anyway, he wasn't a medium himself, but he what he did, he identified mediums, and not just one, but many, many mediums, and started to create questions and get answers and cross-check the answers he got through various mediums and various spirits, obviously. And he eventually, in 1857, published the Spirits book. He used the pen name of Allan Kardec, and two reasons for that. One, he was such a well-renowned educator. He didn't want people to come along with a preconceived idea just because he wrote the book that you should be reading this book and therefore it gave extra. He wanted the book to be judged on its value itself. Also, the spirits told him they wanted him to write in a pen name. And it's called the Spirits book because it was written by spirits. Kardec just codified, he just collected it, organized it. So let's talk a little bit about the Spirits book. It's actually in 4 parts. Initially it was based on 500 questions, I believe, and then the second version was actually 1,000. The first question really deals with first causes. It's more the scientific of God and how the universe was created. The second part is about the spirit's world, about the process of our incarnation and reincarnation, hence the plurality of existences, and the spirit life that's around us now, even at this center, particularly at this center. The moral laws. There are 12 moral laws he talks about in detail. I'm not going to go into it here. And then hopes and consolations. And this chapter really talks about the process of, and explains why in the body we go through joys, but we go through a lot of suffering, be it medical suffering or loss of loved ones. And the same process still continues in the spirit world to some extent. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but chapter 4 refers to that. In 1861, he published the second book, which is the Medium's book. And basically that takes it just expands on the spirit world. Expands on how to develop the skills to communicate with mediums, with spirits. He followed that in 1864 with the gospel, and that takes all the moral laws and expands on that. In 1865, he wrote Heaven and Hell. Spirits does not believe in heaven or hell, but there is a heaven and hell within our own consciousness, depending on how we make the decisions in our life. And that comes from the hopes and consolations. And finally, in 1868, his last book, I haven't read this yet, it's Genesis. I believe maybe Marcella can expand that a little bit more, but it's a book that it goes back to the science again behind Spiritism. I think also at the time there was quite a bit of criticism of the books. Not everybody bought into this concept, and he wrote this book as a way of explaining a little bit more. That's my understanding. That pretty good? Okay. And finally, in 1869, he did pass away and went to the spirit world. So in that 14 years, he did a tremendous amount of work, and that really forms the basis of the Spirit's doctrine. When you start to read it, sometimes it's the language is a little, for want of a better word, clumsy. It is written in French 150 years ago and translated to English, Portuguese, and to many, many languages. But it is a little difficult, needs a little attention to get into the reading, but the value and the messages are very clear and very worthwhile. At the end of the talk today, we're going to give everybody a goodie bag that will include this very good book, a little brown book of Allan Kardec. Has to distinguish between the red book of Chairman Mao, but it's not something, again, it's just a summary. It's in 3 parts. One, it talks about the origins of Spiritism, as I've been talking about now. We're starting with the raps and the noises. And then he goes on to a summary of Spiritism, and then he talks, I think, the last 25 maxims on Spiritism. I just want to read 1 or 2 just to give you a flavour. These are all of the 60 that are there. Number 6, Spirit's free will develops as ideas develops, and God says to them, you can all claim supreme happiness when you've acquired the knowledge you now lack, and when you have completed the task I'm imposing on you. Therefore, work for your advancement to that goal. You will reach it by obeying the law that I've engraved in your conscience. As a result of their free will, some take the shorter path, that of the good, whereas others take the longer, that of evil. Let me just give you another couple more here. When they are incarnate, spirits bring with them what they acquired during their previous existences. This is why people instinctively display special aptitudes or good or bad inclinations that appear to be inborn. Natural bad inclinations are the remnants of a spirit's imperfections that is not yet rid itself of completely. They are also indications of the wrongs it had committed, the true meaning of the original sin. During each existence, it must wash away a few of its impurities. And again, the maxim I talked about before, this one is, let me just read this one. Selfishness, pride, vanity, ambition, greed, hatred, envy, jealousy, and defamation are for the soul poisonous weed that must be pulled up by the roots, and which have their antidote in charity and humility. Okay, so again, everybody will get a copy of this, and it is a good starting point. Just want to briefly talk a little bit about current evidence supporting Spiritism. I actually gave a talk, my first talk here about 4 or 5 weeks ago on this subject. Because one thing I found as a scientist, that this information that Kardec put together is very, very logical, very scientific, but 150 years have gone by. So I started to question, well, what evidence have we got today with all the modern science that we have that Kardec obviously didn't have at that time? And the first area is reincarnation, and particularly in young children, evidence in young children. Started with a Dr. Ian Stevenson, and later he was succeeded by Dr. Jim Tucker at the University of Virginia. And they did a tremendous amount of work studying young children, and young children who had memories of previous lives. As soon as children were old enough to talk, a certain number of children could remember places, names that they'd never been exposed to. And he went to India and Sri Lanka, the places where the religion does believe in reincarnation, but he followed them up and started to study them and documented all this evidence. In fact, there's even cases of children that had died had a very tragic end to a previous life, and they actually carried with them deformation of the body, maybe lost fingers or a scar on the head, a bullet wound, scars corresponding to a bullet that went through the body. And this has all been well documented. There was particularly recently a case of a boy called James Leninger. It actually came into a book by Carol Bowman, who was a therapist and worked a lot in this field. There's some excellent videos about this little boy. He was basically, when he was born, he started having traumas at the age of 2 and 3 that after various sorts of treatment and analysis, they could not find out the root cause. And somebody suggested, well, maybe it was a previous life. His parents were very skeptical. But eventually they bought into this and they started to research it. And the child actually started to remember, in his previous life, he died as a pilot in the World War II. He was stationed on a boat in Asia. He even remembered the name of the boat. The parents didn't even know that, the ship. And if you're interested, that's a very worthwhile video to see. And on a similar tact, as one gets older, a lot of these children lose those memories. And often with therapy they can overcome those traumas and they move on in life. But some people also have some phobias or problems that can be traced back to past lives. And one of the, I don't know if you've heard of Brian Weiss, he's not a spiritist, he's written many books. Many Lies, Many Masters was his first book. And he was a very well-educated psychiatrist from Yale and Harvard. Actually was in Miami for 5 years at the university down here, the hospital down here. And he started to treat a patient, and conventional therapy, psychotherapy, was not working. So he tried hypnosis, and the patient started to come up with memories from past life. And he started to follow up those facts, and she, in a non-hypnotic state, did not know anything about what she was saying. He followed up, and what really caused his attention was one of the sessions, she started under hypnosis to talk about Brian Weiss's son, who died tragically when he was 6 years old, and started giving information that she couldn't possibly have known, not even from him or the family or whatever. And that really convinced him that the spirit world and past lives. And he dedicated the rest of his life. He's been working in this field for more than 30 years now, actually teaching other therapists the process of using regression, past life regression, to help alleviate certain illnesses or near-death experience. I won't go into this very much in the interest of time, but Eben Alexander, he's a neurosurgeon. He suffered from meningitis, nearly died, and had 2 weeks he was in a coma, but came back with his incredible memories. And again, he abandoned the career he had in neurosurgery, and he's focusing his whole academic life now to looking into past life, to near-death experiences. Mediumship, there's some amazing stories. Probably the best known is Chico Xavier, who's a medium in Brazil. He died, passed away 10 years ago or so. But he was a very simple, minimum education in the center of Brazil. And he, from an early age, developed skills that were just, his connection with the spirit world was just amazing. And he actually psychographed more than 450 books. And he'd just sit there and write and write. One weekend he wrote 2 books. In fact, the other week we had this gentleman, Umberto Fabri, was here in the center. And he worked with Chico over many years, helping out at the center that he had there, and actually witnessing this, the writing of the books, and talks about it in this book. He donated the books to the center, and they sold them at the center here, and all the proceedings went to the center. But it's in Portuguese, unfortunately. Maybe one day it will be in English. I don't know. Just want to talk a little bit about, and one of the readings I gave here, talks about this, but we're all born with certain DNA and chromosomes from our parents, and then we have the environment which we grow up into. But there's something else, and again, this little chapter I read here, how can one account for such a variety of skills and abilities from even 2 children from the same parents, and I think a lot of us here have had parents with 2 children, and then the personality just develop in so different ways, yet the same gene, yet the same environment. There is a very good, I don't know if you've heard of Jacob Burnett, but he is a child prodigy. He actually has just got he's now in his master's degree, and he's 14 years old. And there's a lot of good videos. I was going to show a video, but in the interest of time, I think we'll leave it to that. Another lady who caught my attention actually this weekend was Malala. She was the Pakistani girl who was shot by the Taliban. She was shot by the Taliban because she insisted on going to school. I mean, it's something so foreign to us, but in the Taliban did not believe that females should be educated, and she insisted, and eventually one day a terrorist got onto the bus and shot the children. And she was shot in the head, and luckily she was rushed to a Pakistani military hospital and then to England, and she's made a recovery. And last Friday she actually spoke at the UN when they had a special day. Unfortunately, I wanted to show you the middle of this. There's about 15 minutes here, but I have to see if I can move it on a little bit to get to the part I think is most interesting.
Thank you. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In the name of God, the most beneficent, the most merciful. Honorable UN Secretary General, Mr. Ban Ki-moon.
I'm just going to move it on a little bit here if I can. Yeah. Looks like. There we go.
They thought that the bullet would silence us, but they failed. And out of that silence came thousands of voices. The terrorists thought that they would change my aims and stop my ambitions. But nothing changed in my life except this. Weakness, fear, and hopelessness died. Strength, power, and courage was born. my dreams are the same. Dear sisters and brothers, I'm not against anyone. Neither am I here to speak in terms of personal revenge against the Taliban or any other terrorist group. I'm here to speak up for the right of education of every child. I want education for the sons and daughters of the Taliban and all the terrorists and extremists. I do not even hate the Talib who shot me. Even if there is a gun in my hand and he stands in front of me, I would not shoot him.
Okay, I'll stop it there, but I do recommend you watch that whole video. It is very moving, very moving. And again, it illustrates the point that certain people are born with such skills. This girl is 16 years old, and what she went through and where she is now and what she's doing is just, I think, truly amazing, truly amazing. Okay, let's see if I can get out of this. How do I get out? There we go. Oh, I lost my presentation. Let's go back here. So with my little technical hitch here. All right. Let me just go on to the next slide, which I believe is my final slide. Okay, yeah, I want to now just conclude. And I get my... All right. I just want to finalize by just saying what I like about Spiritism. Again, I want to emphasize that I'm not trying to convert anybody here. I hope I can... This gives you an inkling of what Spiritism is all about, and I would strongly recommend you follow it deeper. Again, I like the science, the philosophy, and the religious side of Spiritism. But it's also comforting to know that there is life after death. It's something that never worried me. Actually, I reach 65 this coming Thursday, so I'm a senior citizen. So maybe I should start thinking a bit more about what happens after I pass away. I love the fact about the concept of spiritual growth, and not only just this incarnation, but in various incarnations. It certainly sensitized me to the duality of vices and virtues. We're all aware of what is right. We know in our souls what is right and what is wrong, but the difficulty is practicing it every day. And Spiritism has sensitized me to that. Yes, I still lose my temper. Yes, I'm still impatient. But at least I know I'm impatient and I shouldn't be, and I try and improve upon it. The other good thing I like about Spiritism is that we make mistakes. That's part of life. The thing is, we have to learn by them and try not to make them again and again and again. But Spiritism is very flexible in that respect. It does, it's part of growing up. It also teaches you to be the owner of whatever happens in your life. It's so easy sometimes, oh gosh, why did they do that to me? Why did that? Why put the blame on others? But it's all in you. You create your life. You create it maybe not from choices you made in this existence, but certainly in past existences. And also, again, the Spiritism, you can be selective in Spiritism. There's a lot of Spiritism that I find a little bit disconcerting. I'm not sure I understand it, not sure I agree with it. That doesn't matter. I don't think that matters. If you don't believe in God as God, we have a talker here who used to talk about God as the grand old dude. Whatever your concept of God is, that's fine. That's fine. As long as you buy into the moral teachings, and that's what's important. And it's also evolving constantly. It's changing. There's new things coming out in science, new things coming out in Spiritism. And that's what makes it exciting. And I just love this discovery process. When I prepared this presentation, I probably spent 20 hours on the computer, not because I need 20 hours to do this presentation, but because once you start looking into something, and it's interesting like this is, you can start getting sidetracked and learning more and finding other things. And that's the beauty of the age we're living today. I mean, all you need is a computer and internet connection, and you can find everything you want with Wikipedia and YouTube and TED lectures and the Spiritism sites, and we'll talk afterwards, but there are some excellent sites. ExploreSpiritism.com, which is something I didn't know about, that was actually created by some of the members of the centre here I learned today. It's an excellent site. if you do nothing else after this meeting today, but just go on that site, explorespiritism.com, and it walks you through a lot of very, very interesting material. And lastly, I do value the friendship and the info exchange I have here at the centre, and that's also been I knew 1 or 2 people here before I started coming. Now I know everybody on the first name basis, and it's that whole fraternity that also makes it very worthwhile. And with that, I'll end my talk. Thank you very much for your time. So, I'm going to hand over to Sandra, and she's going to talk a little bit more about the centre and the activities of the centre, and then we'll open it to... All right, so there you go. I'll leave it to you. Thanks, and just touch the button. It's there. It's already on. So just not here. Just go here. There you go.
Good morning again. Good morning. I really enjoyed your talk. Thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted to let you know also a little bit about our meetings, because as David mentioned, we have to take personal responsibility for our own spiritual growth. We're the only ones that can make a change within. And fortunately, our center and many centers around, actually the whole United States, offer classes. I think ours is the best. One of the main things that we do is the lecture today that you guys are listening to. It's at 11 o'clock, normally from 11 to about 12:15, even though on the calendar I think it says 11 to 12.
Whoops, you got it wrong. Okay, don't worry. Let's go back there. Just click here. Up there. Sorry, forward. So then you go, there you go, just here. That's what you have to do.
Normally in the lectures we do exactly what we did today. So we'll have somebody do an opening reading, which is very brief. Sometimes we'll give a little explanation about it, and it's sort of like a daily prayer that you would do at home every day. Then we have the opening prayer that our friend Terry did, where we just begin our group. And the lecture is going to vary from every week. We have different speakers. Again, like David said, there is no minister, there is no priest. So it's you and me who are giving the lectures, and of course, much more seasoned spiritists. So we also have passes. We're not going to be doing the passes today. For those of you who it's your first time and you don't know what a pass is, it's really like a hands-on healing. So if you're feeling, it doesn't matter how you're feeling actually. You can be feeling down, you can be feeling sick, you can be feeling good. The pass will actually make you feel better. Okay, it does clear energies and it brings you in energies from the spirits. It's done in a room, the same room all the time, and it's done in group. It lasts maybe 2 or 3 minutes at the most. And then at the end we have a closing prayer. Everybody after the passes, they come in, and again, we don't have rituals. So in the passes room, you're not going to have incense, you're not going to have candles. It's simply a room where we go in and receive a healing. And we have several facilitators in the Spiritist group, and if you keep on assisting and you are interested, you will be invited also to learn how to do the passes. The closing prayer will be, we will have a closing prayer today too, so you'll get an example. A little example of past and future lectures. They're all interesting, they're all very different. Some are more scientific, some are more philosophical, some are more religious per se. Some of the titles are here: alcoholism, natural disasters, the medium's book. I love dreams, so for me that was a very interesting lecture. And we do have questions and answers after all the lectures, so it's always good to keep in mind that if you have a doubt or you don't agree with something or you just want to clarify it, that's what we're here for. We also have great outside speakers. Everybody does do this in a voluntary way, so sometimes you can't have speakers or have a hard schedule. So when you have a speaker that you like, you should come and listen to him. You don't know when they're going to come back. We have Alciu back there who does most of our videos. So for example, today, this particular lecture was recorded, and you can go on YouTube and go back to any of the lectures. And not just from our center, but from all of the centers pretty much are starting to do that. This is my favorite. We have the best teacher in all of the U.S. I'm not biased at all, at all. Her name is Susanna. So she's not here today. She couldn't be with us, and I was really sad she couldn't be here. But she's fantastic. Every time I think she's going to get stuck with a question, she answers it. I'm not sure how. She started the English group here in the center, and we meet every Tuesday at from 6:30 to 7:30. In our group, we feel it's too short, but we're happy with what we can get. This really gives us an opportunity to learn about Spiritism, which really is love in action. And I'm sure that most of you at some point in your life have wondered, what am I doing here? What's the purpose of life? And these are the questions, and these are the things that we talk about in class. And one, I don't know how the Portuguese class goes, but in our English class, we're very controversial. We give her a hard time. Yeah, we don't give her any peace. But like I said, it really impresses me, and it has caused a big impression in my life, because if she doesn't know something, she'll tell you she doesn't know, but she'll give you an avenue where to search. So it's a lot of fun, and we do know each other quite well. The group has you become a family. The Portuguese group also has a meeting on Tuesdays right after ours. They have one in here, and it's from 8 to 9:15. And this, again, if you speak Portuguese, the lectures are excellent. And they have the advantage that they also have Portuguese speakers coming from Brazil. Oh, they also do have classes for young children. So if you don't have a babysitter and you want your children to learn about Spiritism, which again, I go back to it because it is love in action. It's a wonderful way to bring your children up. And we do have two age groups. However, I believe they're closed in the center until August 14th. Is that it? Everybody's on vacation. So with that in mind, we're going to do questions and answers. We actually have several very seasoned spiritists here. I'm really not going to be the one answering the questions, but if you have any questions, this is a great moment to bring them up. I have a question. David was saying that the Spiritist group doesn't have a temple or a church or anything like that. However, this maybe is my impression, but I know when we do the passes, we specifically only do passes and those kinds of spiritual rooms. So, I don't know, that is kind of like a little temple, isn't it?
It's not a little temple. Of course, we see a few Spiritist centers in Brazil and many other places that actually the passes, hi, my name is Marcelo. Nice to meet you for the ones that doesn't know me. We see Spiritist centers in Brazil and many other places that they don't have the same size that we have over here. So how the passes are given inside of the room. Actually, when we build a room over there, it just because, of course, this is going to be the next lecture one day. You will see we are dealing with two dimensions. One is the physical dimension, and the other one is the spiritual dimension. When you read the books from André Luiz, which is one of the students of Chico Xavier, you will see the dimensions of this extra physical measurements, if I can take this word, for this physical place. So in that little room, the concentrations of energies, of thoughts, of wishes, of many energies. People are wishing to get well. People are wishing to do better. People are wishing to, and we sort of like, not compensate, it's impregnate the walls. It's complicated. I'm not going to answer with all the details in the short answers, but it's better for us to have a separate places just because of that. Also because there's people praying and there's people like, it's going to be difficult for us to be in front of each one of you doing the passes. It's a sort of like, it's not very practical.
Helps you focus.
That's right. That's right. I don't know if I answered your question or maybe.
Thanks, Emma. Just
How big is the Spiritist movement in the U.S.? Do you know?
We did this, the last census that we did, we found out that we have currently approximately 3,500 workers, people that actually volunteers. Of course, maybe there are more. It's a very small movement so far. We have approximately 80 centers, Spiritist centers, spreading around the whole U.S. And we have more spiritualistic places that combine ideas with Spiritism, spiritualism, and we'll see the bridges being done little by little. So it's growing faster, and it's growing faster.
any other questions?
Sure.
It's kind of like a clarification. I think one of the things that appeals to me about Spiritism is the understanding of Jesus Christ, that he is considered a very evolved spirit, maybe the most evolved spirit, but not in any way essentially different from any one of us. In other words, we are evolving toward his example versus some other religions, Christian ideas, where he's kind of a separate. I mean, it's a little bit confusing, but where they see him as above in a way, like Son of God, different from.
When Jesus said, you can do what I am doing and much more,
Right.
he's already pointing like what the potentialities that we already carry on inside of us. So we are constantly evolving, and one day we all going to be a Jesus Christ in potential. We are Jesus Christ in potential. So he is our older brother, and because of the confusion that people say like, oh, he's God, he's the master, or something like this, it's because one of his phrases, it says like, me, when Jesus says like, me and the Father are one, it simply means that he was so in connection with the desires of the divine, with the higher above, which is our Father, that people, oh my God, he might be God. And so this confusion was sort of like going on and on and on, and we made this misconception about his figure to be God or a son of God. But in fact, he is a son of God, just like us, but millions and billions of years ahead of us. Did I answer?
That's a long, long work in progress. John?
I think the other thing that's interesting to me as far as Spiritism is concerned, that Kardec book, the Spiritist book, it's really not his book in a sense. He put together questions that he sent to mediums all over the world, and the answers to these questions from the mediums were very similar. So his book is really answers to questions that he compiled that have a similar thread. So it's not just imagination it came from information from the spirits and mediums from all over the world.
Terry?
One couple of things I'd like to share. I've been coming here approximately 4 years now, and I'll never forget when I first came here. Our 7-day meeting was 4, 5, or 6 people in a little circle. And when we moved, I remember when we moved to this space, I said, how in the world are we going to be able to fill all this space with folks? I've been to a lot of churches in my lifetime, but have never been in a place where there is so much caring and loving as there is here. And the primary reason I come here, my favorite thing about what we do here is, in fact, the path as a road. I have personally experienced healing here. I don't know how it works. All I know is that it does work. And I also want to mention that this is nothing scary. There is no touching of anyone's person. And it's something that is just, it's kind of like magnetism. You can experience the power of a magnet, but you can't see it. And we have that here. That's it.
No, that leads to my question. My question is, has the wish for health or a better life has to be voiced, or you just mentally wish?
Not only do you have to wish, you have to have a proactive. Sorry, hi guys. In the aspect of healing, not only do you have to have the desire, the will, because our thoughts really do contribute and create. It's a living force, but you also have to have a proactive movement towards your own healing. So a lot of times when you go there, if you have an imbalance, if you're suffering from some kind of emotional issues, you have to work on that yourself. You're the only one who truly knows what your needs are inside. As far as the physical ones are concerned as well, there's a whole lot of explanation that we don't have time here, but you also have an active movement on that too.
Thank you.
Which also, just really quick, every time Jesus performed a healing, and Terry opened a message today about faith, he always said, your faith has saved you. He never said, I saved you. Faith, as he said, is a driving force. So, just wanted to...
Anybody else?
I just want to make a comment, and that's what I really love about Spiritism. It's actually salvation is from within. So healing is from within. It has to be supported at all times. But once we get to know ourselves, at least we try to know ourselves and know our vices and know how well we need to cultivate the virtues, and that's how we get saved. And how we get closer to Christ, like to be in Christ eventually. So it's sort of like, yes, it's a combination of actually being connected with the spiritual world or trying to be connected, but at the same time, working as hard within my own self.
Thank you. I think, just to add a little comment, one of the things about the teachings, when you do actually participate, obviously you get more out of it because you are learning. But one of the things that it does teach you is that, like he mentioned, we do make mistakes and we learn not to be judgmental, because a lot of our illnesses are coming from our own judgment of ourselves. It could be coming from past lives too, but we need to be kind and loving to ourselves, and Spiritism will teach you that.
I've been coming for about 6 to 8 months, and I had a lot of doubts. I was raised Catholic, and I had a lot of doubts of the religion itself because I had a lot of questions that I couldn't really answer. Like, how can we just die? You meet such beautiful people in this life. How can you just die and everything goes to nothing? And when I started coming here, it's like everything fell into place. And now I know where I belong. It's magnificent.
That's wonderful. Anybody want to share another experience or question?
I just have a question. If we're all potential mediums, how can we open our mind to interact with the love that we felt from loved ones in a past experience? I have many dreams with family members that died, and I see them in my dreams physically, but sometimes I see them as a spirit, like they come to me. How in my physical life, how can I get them to guide me a little bit more? Like, what does the spiritualist movement offer for that, that type of want?
You want to take that? Okay. It's a thing that David said that I actually wrote it down that I wanted to comment on, so thank you for bringing this question up, because when he says that we are all mediums, some are more to a higher degree than others. It goes with something that we wanted to talk about here also. A lot of times we receive intuitions. That's a form of mediumship. We have dreams, intuitive dreams. That's a type of mediumship as well. Other people who have a higher degree in their mediumship capabilities are able to see, to hear, to channel in writing, as Chico Xavier did. We have to take into consideration that the good spirits, we have our own guardian angel, we have our own mentor, if you want to call it. We all have the presence of the good spirits with us, as well as we have the presence of other spirits that we attract based on how we feel, how we think. It's almost like waves. We get in tune to the AM or FM radio station, if we want to say it that way. As far as our loved ones are concerned, we have to take something into consideration. The spirit world is the real life. This here is all temporary. We are here in physical world temporarily. When we discarnate, when we physically die, our spirit world goes into the spirit realm and we continue being who we are. You're going, Jatari, you're going to be who you are today. You're going to discarnate with a lot of qualities that you acquire here in this life, that you progress. You made an active movement and effort into becoming a better person, as David himself said. It counts, it goes into account how much we have learned. And you're also going to take with you the things that you haven't yet developed. May it be, I won't use you as an example, but other people, selfishness, other moral vices that we still can't get rid of it yet, okay? Because it's part of our nature. It's a gradual process, as Allan Kardec very well explains in all of his books. Our loved ones sometimes may not be in a very feasible or good condition yet to be guiding us and assisting us. They may be in the spirit world, relearning, readapting, working towards themselves as well. When they are in the condition of helping us, there is no need to evoke, because the ties that we form with our loved ones are never broken. So let's say a mother discarnated and she's in the spirit world. When she's already incapable of assisting a loved son who stayed behind, it's automatically going to be granted if she's capable of doing so. If she's capable of guiding you. How you are going to get in touch with that is always going to be through prayer. Prayer assists us in receiving the friendly suggestions from the spirit world. It assists us in forming a barrier of light so that we can be guided by the good suggestions from the good spirits. But we also always have to take into consideration that we shouldn't be evoking and we shouldn't be trying to call upon them to help us, because sometimes they're not yet capable of doing so. When they are, they will. You will have dreams. Sometimes you have a dream with a loved one and it's so strong that you wake up and you feel the hug. That's the most profound, comforting aspect of Spiritism, is realizing that once we die, it's just a temporary separation. Like somebody went traveling and you won't see them for a few months or a few years until you're together again. Those ties are never broken. If you see it, some people are even better. They see them, which is a beautiful thing as well. But how do you see them? Do you see them well? If you see them and they don't seem well, do you pray on their behalf? So this is just something that I wanted to bring our attention to. And we can always learn a little bit more about this as we read some of the work, and even in the study groups. So I hope I answered a little bit.
Okay.
I just kind of wanted to be fairly new myself to Spiritism. David, you have brought it up very well too. There is a scientific part to it. This isn't like, I've talked about many religions with many people, and some, adherents to certain religions. It's a sense of pride for them saying that our religion is simple. All we do is say this is it and that's it. Since there is a scientific aspect to Spiritism, if you think of all the literature there is to describe our physical world, now imagine this spiritual world, which is so much bigger. It's not confined just to what we can hear and touch and feel and see. There are a lot of books explaining a lot of things, and more questions will be answered, and you get more questions that you'll find more answers to. And Spiritism keeps evolving, so there are more revelations that keep coming on. But it's definitely not something, it appeals to your intellect, but it's not something that will be answered in one or two questions. But there are hundreds and hundreds of books and hundreds of avenues and channels that will answer pretty much every question. And it's just like in our Spiritist book class that you mentioned, Sandra, just when we think that we'll get to a dead end, that we'll get to a roadblock, there always seems to be an answer for everything. But it is very complex.
Oh yeah, but just a really quick note also on that complexity. David said that one of the really great aspects about Spiritism is how exciting it is, because it's always progressing. And I just wanted to share something that I believe that what's so exciting about Spiritism is that as we progress, our mind broadens, our vision broadens a lot more in understanding all of this complexity that we talk about in Spiritism. This is why it's always exciting. Sometimes you read something today that you read on the Spirit's book, that you read 10 years ago, and you see it in a whole new light. Because life's lesson will give us this opportunity to see it in a different way. And the teachings and the studies, the constant studies, is going to provide an opportunity for understanding them as well. That's the exciting part of it too.
So bridges are being done. And the bridges are being done. Many religions, from many philosophical chains. At the end, these bridges are being constructed. So by no means we intend to have the final answer. The final answer, this is, I am sure, and I'm pretty sure, it's to make ourselves a better person and to teach us how to love one another. This is the final objective of Spiritism. This is the final objective of any religion in the face of the globe that intends to better men, to better the man, to better the woman, to make ourselves better people in order for us to transform the face of the earth. That's why selfishness, in the root of selfishness that we sometimes carry so subtle, we don't even know that we are feeling selfish, but we are in many ways, shapes, or form. We demonstrate this. So this is the fight that we have to put in, to deal and to fight not against anyone, to fight with compassion and tranquility with ourselves. We call this inner transformation. Once we transform ourselves, we will be a transformation. We will see a transformation in our family cell. And this family cell, it's the one that comprises the whole community. And then the whole community will transform the city. And then the city, the state, and the country, and the globe. So that's what I wanted to say.
We are going to do the final prayer. Let us do a short final prayer. By simply closing our eyes, opening our hearts, and elevating our thoughts to our Master Jesus. And realizing as the sun shines outside that we have so much to be thankful for. Constantly asking, constantly petitioning to the spirit world. And this morning among the fraternity and the new friends and the old friends that come together, we feel the loving embrace from the spirit realm, embracing us, showering us with their blessings, with the elements that is necessary to bring us back into harmony and balance, allowing us this moment of peace to be able to truly analyze the moment of our lives, the obstacles that we are encountering, the strength and courage necessary to see them as simple steps in the ladder that is bringing us in the ascension into the higher realms of life. We thank you, Father, for allowing us to be here this morning in your name. Brothers and sisters that we are in humanity, universally speaking, in this law of love that unites us all in a common objective of spiritual growth, of spiritual ascension. We ask that your blessings and that this energy may be with us in this moment, that it may follow us to our home, that we may be able to cultivate it through prayer, through patience, through tolerance, through understanding of your designs, even if we don't understand them, and truly believing in you, understanding why we believe in you, Father, why we have this faith that week after week brings us back to this small place that provides a moment of studies based on the Spiritist teachings, allowing us for growth, allowing us to break free of ourselves, of getting rid of everything that hinders us behind, In gratitude for allowing a special Spiritist teachings that comes to us, giving us the promised consolation that all of the questions will be answered, that we are always going to be tied to our loved ones, whether we can physically see them or not, that it is going to be through our own individual progress that we will grow, that it's not a transferable task, that yet we need each other in order to accomplish it. Bless each and every one of us, incarnate or discarnate, and allow for this peace to go with us to our home, touching anyone that we may encounter, touching our family members, touching our co-workers during the week that is about to begin, giving thanks that we are able to finally understand the small benefits such as seeing, hearing, speaking, feeling. Even if we feel pain, it is a sign that we are alive and given a new opportunity in this new incarnation. Thank you so much, and so be it.
So be it.